It was a pretty exciting weekend in sports. And one of the things, the Browns are done with their season, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions that we do have about the Cleveland Browns. So I want to start off talking about them because it was conference championship weekend, and we had an exciting game and a not so exciting game. So, but like I was saying, Brandy should be joining me shortly. I'm going to start off talking about the Cleveland Browns and what is to come of their future, because as the football season, winds down, there's a lot of questions that we have going into this new season and what's going to happen. So that's one of the things that we're going to try to have some answers today. And one of the questions I had is, where do we see this team at next year? And there are a lot of questions regarding that. How is this team supposed to be? Are they going to be any good? Is there going to be any improvement next year? We always go into the next season with very high expectations, and expectations are going to be very high again. You had to get a new defensive coordinator because Joe Woods unfortunately didn't work out. If anything, the defense has continued to regress since Kevin Stefanski's first year of 2020. So, what can they do to get back to defense that can stop the run, that can also stop the pass, a defense that doesn't get shredded and gives up a couple hundred yards per game? Each team is going to do that. But, the Browns, unfortunately, were one of the worst run teams in the league, run defenses in the league. So, what are you going to do to have these things happen? So, there are a lot of questions as to going into next year. You got a lot of questions on the defense, and Jim Schwartz was hired because he is supposed to be the person that's supposed to right that ship on that defense, and figure out what players are good for his system and those that necessarily aren't. How can he integrate those into his system? Um, Also, you got to figure out, what system do you want to play? What type of defense do you want to play? What type of defense are you going to play to stop the run? You already have two great cornerbacks in Greg Newsome and Denzel Ward. How are you going to get the most out of them when it comes to passing plays? What are you going to do at linebacker, because you have some undersized linebackers? So what are you going to do with the linebackers that necessarily, unfortunately, a lot of them got hurt this season. So that was a bad thing. What do you do about injury? Because sometimes you can't help injuries at all. And unfortunately, the Browns were just unlucky, and they had three green dot wearers go down and be hurt this season. So that was something that nobody could anticipate. So how is he going to configure all these things and get the best out of these players? Because on paper, this defense looks like a defense that's going to be able to do a lot of things, and that this defense looks like a defense that should be stopping people. This defense is a defense that looks like they should be getting sacks, but they necessarily aren't. They're giving up sacks. Hey, Brandy, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good to have you here. So I was just talking about, what are some of the expectations for next year as we see the season winding down, and as we go to conference championships, what can we realistically expect, out of this team last year? We saw some great football, this weekend, and we saw some not so great football this weekend due to injury as well. But what should we expect to see out of the Browns next year? Because I really haven't heard too many people addressing that. And just before you came on, I was addressing the defensive aspect of it. What can Jim Schwartz do to improve this defense? What are some of your thoughts about, where do we see this team being at next season?
Yeah, so I think, to start off with the defense, like you said, I think Jim Schwartz coming here is going to be a good thing. A lot of the miscommunications this past season with the Browns, were when they were in that zone defense, they were having a lot of the miscommunications, and Jim Schwartz is typically known to, do man on man coverage. So I think that's going to help out a lot with the players on the team. But I think, one thing this defense does have to improve this next season, especially having a new coach. But I think on the offensive side, I think we can expect a lot more from Deshaun Watson. I'm hoping, in 2020, his last year with Houston, he had thrown over 4,000 yards. So I'm hoping, we could see that elite quarterback back.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. And what's going to be the perfect balance for Kevin Stefanski as he's calling the plays, because you have a quarterback that you think is going to solve all of your quarterback issues. So are you going to become a pass happy offense and not necessarily rely on the run, where you kind of got this golden goose here, one of the best running backs in all of the NFL? I was going to say Major League Baseball and all of the NFL. So how are you going to use him effectively and not get past happy because you got Deshaun Watson, who we know can light it up? So, those are some questions there. But, as we can see, this AFC is loaded, right now. You have Kenny Pickett, which, is what one would say is the weakest quarterback in this league. But, he helped, Pittsburgh prevail and almost make the playoffs. But Joe Burrow, I don't know if you can say he's developing, because he seems like he's developed to me. But also you got Lamar as of right now, and you have Deshaun Watson. So do you think that this team is going to be able to compete in the AFC North next year?
I think they will be able to compete as long as, the things that we have in mind of how the defense should be playing in the offense. I think if they are able to do those things on the field, then there should be no way that they should be able to keep up with other teams in the division.
Yeah, because we don't know what's going to happen with Lamar right now. So that's another question mark. Will he be back with the Ravens? Will the Ravens be searching for a new quarterback to fit? I always get them confused. I think it's John Harbaugh. I can't remember which one is which. It's like they're a set of twins. But will he? And John says that it's going to be 1,000%. He's 1,000% sure, that 200% sure that Lamar is going to be back. But right now they're in a contract disagreement, so there's no telling with that. But we can't forget about the Ravens making the playoffs. Can't forget about Pittsburgh almost making the playoffs, and obviously Cincinnati going to the AFC Championship game. So you have a division in which two teams made the playoffs and a third team almost did. So this is a division that's no joke. Everybody says that this is one of the toughest divisions of all of football, and you're having that, and you're going to be having these quarterbacks do battle, which is one of the most important positions on the field. But you're going to be having these quarterbacks duel out each other for years to come, and they're good and they're young. So it's going to take a lot, but can Deshaun Watson get up to speed with, not playing football for 700 days? He got, a crack at 6 games, but, having him have a full mini camp, a full training camp, and things like that, you expect them to have marked improvement going to the next season. And you expect that position isn't one that you have any questions about, because it's going to be so good. But I don't necessarily know, because one of the things is we don't have a ton of draft picks, Brandy. So what are we necessarily doing to improve the game? I know the salary cap just went up, I think, by $16 million this year, which is like a record. But how many people in free agency would want to come here where there are so many other choices that are more attractive and teams that are winning?
Yeah, it is hard, especially with all the free agents that they have, on the team right now. But, hopefully a lot of the free agents are willing to stay here. And, I think, the Browns do have enough money to go out there and get the free agents that they do want.
Yeah, and that's important. You hope that things like Jadeveon Clowney, what he said in public, you hope that doesn't sour people's, other players' opinions. But at the end of the day, Browns was always a team that people came to because they wanted a paycheck. And you're hoping that it's not the same now. You're hoping that people would want to be here and play here. And Jadeveon Clowney has said that he re-signed again because Deshaun Watson was here. And we know that they had a chance to play together in Houston. So, he wanted to come where his teammate and his buddy was. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for him for whatever reasons. And it's very doubtful that he'll be back next year because he was sent home, for the last week of the season and didn't play in a game. So that's not a very good sign. But you hope that other free agents wouldn't take a look at that and be like, well, I'm not coming here too. You hope that they would have an open mind about wanting to, be here and thinking that this team can actually compete in this division. And they truly didn't, this season. They had the huge win over Cincinnati on Monday Night Football. They had, did they beat the Ravens this year?
The Browns?
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Oh no, they did beat the Ravens. They did beat the Ravens. They beat them here. Remember, it was a real low scoring game.
Lamar did not play that game. Was he hurt?
Yeah, Lamar did not play that game. So they did get a victory over Baltimore. So they beat every team in the division. So they went 3-3 in the division, which is 500. But you have to be able to beat your team in the division twice in order to be able to get somewhere. And they came close to beating Pittsburgh. Well, not really. They kind of got blown out. But, if they had beaten Pittsburgh, it would have been like the last time since the 1980s that they had a sweep of Pittsburgh during the regular season, which is just crazy to me. But, hoping that you can sign some decent free agents who can actually contribute in free agency because you don't have any first round picks, for a couple of rounds. So, we're hoping that the Browns didn't shoot themselves in the foot. And this is in where your scouts are really going to get paid their money because what are you going to be able to get out of the draft? Where's the diamonds in the roughs? And so far, the Cleveland Browns haven't proved that they'll be able to find those diamonds in the rough.
Yeah, and I think the one thing to, watch for Pittsburgh, like you said, they almost made the playoffs this year. And they were pretty much the whole year going back and forth between Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. So, going to this next season, I see them, Mike Tomlin picking the full-time quarterback, which I think is just going to make them even a tougher team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's leaning towards Kenny Pickett and his development for the future, and using Mitch Trubisky, as a backup because that's pretty much all Mitch Trubisky has pretty much been is just a backup. So I'm thinking they're looking to develop Kenny Pickett, and he had the opportunity to get some great experience this year and continue to develop him, and he's going to be the quarterback of the future that Pittsburgh is hoping will be able to give the AFC North fits for years to come. So, I don't think that the Browns are there just yet. I do not think that going into this season that they're going to be a good team again. I think that they're going to be, trying to get some kinks out of things, but, and developing some players, developing, DPJ and some of these young defenders that they have. But I don't know. After watching, the games this weekend and seeing where some of these teams are at compared to where the Browns are at, I'm not seeing it for the Cleveland Browns right now at all. So I think it's going to take some time and, maybe a year or so, but, we don't necessarily want to wait because on paper, this team is a good team saying that, they should be competing for playoff spots. They should be competitive in the AFC North. 500 isn't going to cut it. We're talking about sweeping opponents, and I just don't see this team being there next season either. And I hate to be pessimistic, but I think I'm being realistic because you have to do an overhaul on defense. You have to address the front seven. So, what are you actually doing to do that? And I think it's going to take more than one season to address that.
Yeah, I agree, especially at the linebacker position as well, especially having all these injuries. And now, some of them like Anthony Walker, he's a free agent. So a lot of the positions are going to be a lot of switches that, weren't there last year.
Should they re-sign Anthony Walker and bring him back?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I've been going back and forth about that one. I think, when he was with Indianapolis, he was a captain there, and I think he did, perform better when he was there than he did with the Browns. But I don't know, maybe having a coach like Jim Schwartz will, help these type of players be able to take that next step.
hmm Yeah, hopefully the Browns will want him back, and he is key to develop these players and getting the best out of them. One of the things you mentioned is switching defensively from man to man, and I feel like you hold people accountable, and I think you get it. Well, they got exploited in the zone defense, but man to man, you're held accountable, and you're right there. Do you get beat? Are you winning the 50-50 balls? What are you doing? So I think there's a little bit more on spotlight when you're going straight up, against the other opponent. But we got to go ahead and take our first break. So, Brandy, we are going to be right back. You're listening to Her in the Huddle on WOVU at 95.9 FM. We'll be right back.
Redlining. The government-supported racist policy of residential segregation carried out by banks in the 1930s created racial wealth inequality with lasting effects, still seen and felt in 2023. On Wednesday, February 8th at 7 p.m., join Joy D. Johnson, Executive Director of Burton Belcar Development, for a conversation about the racist effects of redlining on Cleveland from the 1930s to today at the Maltz Museum, 2929 Richmond Road in Beechwood. Moderated by Ayanna Blue Donald, former director of Cleveland's Department of Building and Housing. The conversation will also feature Cleveland Ward 7 Councilwoman Stephanie House and Kevin J. Nowak, Executive Director of Cleveland Housing Network, with an open dialogue about building a more equitable tomorrow. Register to attend at maltzmuseum.org or call 216-593-0575. This message is brought to you by the Maltz Museum and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United. Burton Belcar Community Radio. The Village of Healing Center is the first and only clinic for Black women in Cuyahoga County, connecting Black patients with Black providers. Our culturally sensitive-based approach to healthcare decreases racial disparities and provides Black women access to the healthcare they deserve. The Village of Healing Center serves pregnant and non-pregnant women and all their women's health and mental health care needs, including annual exams, pregnancy and postpartum care, menopause concerns, and mental health therapy. Visit villageofhealingcle.com. That's villageofhealingcle.com or call 216-815-4325 to make an appointment today. This message is brought to you by the Village of Healing Center and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United. Burton Belcar Community Radio.
Hey, this is your girl Imani Capri from Conversations Encourage and Truth Be Told. Listen, where else are you going to hear all types of different music, dope talk shows, news, and your voices? Only here on WOVU 95.9 FM Cleveland.
Welcome back to Her in the Huddle with Rachel Hill, the First Lady of Sports.
All right. Welcome back to Her in the Huddle on WOVU and 95.9 FM. This is your girl, Rachel Hill, the First Lady of Sports. I'm here with Brandy Fairfax. And remember, you can keep it locked right here on 95.9 FM, your regular radio dial, or you can download that WOVU app so you can listen to us on the go. You can also listen to us online at WOVU.org. And then also you can contact the station at any time with any questions, comments, or concerns. And that's 216-271-0959. And Brandy and I were just talking about the Cleveland Browns. And, one thing is, this is the end of the season. Cleveland Browns are not in the playoffs, but, we also have to think about, this team moving forward. And when you see the other teams, playing at this high level in these conference championship games, can the Cleveland Browns get to this level? Do you think that they can possibly get to this level where they can compete and play for our AFC title, or does that seem very far-fetched and very out of reach?
I think it is possible. I just don't think this season, I think this season they should and can make playoffs, but I think, to get to that AFC championship, I think, they still do probably need more time and probably not until, the season after the next.
Mm-hmm. So you're anticipating not having the best season next year at all either?
I think they could do decent. I think they, should be able to make playoffs, but I think, yeah, like you said, I think, not this year. They still need some more time and some other players.
But the question is, can they actually advance in the playoffs besides wild card weekend?
Yeah, that's tough. I don't think so right now compared to the other teams that they're facing.
Hmm. I agree with you. I still, think we're a year or two away. Talking about Kevin Stefanski, hot seat. Is the seat hot going into this season? If they start off very bad, a couple of offers, is he going to get fired?
Yeah, I think the seat is definitely warm for him. I think, he does have a long contract. So I think, they are trying to like stay away from firing him, especially with all the coaching changes they've had in the past few years. But I think, if they're not able to produce this year, then his seat is definitely warm.
Yeah, I think this fan base will be crying for blood if there's a couple offers going into this season and they don't get a win and win some of the games that they should be winning. I think that there's definitely going to be an outcry for his job. So, that's one of the things that, and then also too, this defense is supposed to be improved. You got rid of Joe Woods, so you can blame the defense on Joe Woods. You got rid of him. What is Jim Schwartz going to do for you? So, that's another thing. He hired Jim Schwartz because he's been a head coach before. He's, coached, over 25 years in this league and his expertise, so he could focus more on the offense. So, what's going to happen with this offense? What's going to happen with this defense? Now, you kind of told Jim Schwartz, this is your problem. You go ahead and handle it. You've done this before. So, if this defense doesn't improve and they are the reason why you lose games, I definitely think that the block is hot and, he's going to worry about his job. What about Andrew Berry? Is his seat hot as well? Because there's been a lot of misses on his picks.
Yeah, I think that's the hard thing about him. I think, he has done pretty well at his job that he's been here. Most of the free agents that he signed has been, great picks when we got Odell, Jarvis, just some of those few in the past couple of years. But yeah, like you said, the draft picks, they have kind of gone hit or miss. A lot of these players too have been great in college. They just haven't, taken that step in the NFL.
Yeah, so we got an issue with development and developing these players too. So that's something that the staff needs to work really hard at because the talent is there. And like we said, on paper, everything is where it's supposed to be and it should be. But you got some issues. And George just said, playing a fourth place schedule in 2023 opens a chance of meeting in the playoffs. But the AFC North will beat each other up. So we need to win outside our conference and win farewell against the NFC opponents we face according to the schedule. We face the NFC West this year. And I think the AFC South, I believe. Yeah, I want to say the AFC South and NFC West. So that's going to be tough, playing San Francisco, playing the Seahawks and stuff like that. So that's definitely going to be tough. So that's going to be very interesting. So that's a great play. That's a great point, George. Can they beat, the other bad teams around the league too? So that's another thing that needs to be thought about. But I believe Andrew Berry's seat is hot too because I consider them a pair. Pretty much they came in together. They're linked together. They like working together. And Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski is his boy. And unfortunately, you might have to fire your friend or you're probably going to get fired as well, because like I said, if they start off, bad next year, there's going to be, crying for both of their heads. So no telling how long, they'll be around. But as you mentioned too, continuing to change regimes is not something that's a good thing as well. It's very frowned upon because how many times can you just say we haven't gotten it right and what is it going to take to get it right? So, I agree with you when it comes to that. Do you think there'll be any improvement in defense next year?
I think there should. I think, with Jim Schwartz coming in with all the experience he has and, how he's been been able to work with other defenses in the past couple of years. So I think, they definitely should be able to take that next step. Plus, with a lot of injuries coming back, I think, that helps as well.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that on offense, to answer that question as well, I think that there will be minimal improvements in defense this year. I feel like, there's a lot of hurdles that they need to overcome, especially, at the linebacker spot and trying to figure out what they're going to do. But, I feel like that front seven isn't going to be addressed in all of one season. So, getting players in here with some skill, talent, and ability is going to be something that's very important. Getting some possible veterans in here, obviously, Myles Garrett is going to be highlighted defensively this season. It just is what it is. Jadeveon Clowney said he didn't like that, but that's the type of defense that Jim Schwartz wants to play. But I think there will be some improvement. I don't want to say marginal, but I think there will be improvement upon defense, and I'm just hoping that there is, because who knows what happens until they get in those games. And then, do you think that they'll be pass happy, or do you think that there will be a good blend and a good mix of what they're going to do offensively, such as passing the ball and running the ball?
Yeah, I think, they definitely will have to find that balance. And I think, it also will depend on the other teams that we're playing. Some games we might have to throw a little bit more or run a little bit more depending on the defense we're playing. But I think, they do have to find that happy balance, because I think our passing game is really good. Plus, having Nick Chubb as running back, you want to run it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things is we know that we're pretty much solidified at running back. Unfortunately, Kareem Hunt isn't going to be back next season, but you have Jerome Ford as well. You still have Dearness Johnson, so you still have three backs with Nick Chubb carrying the load. But, what are you going to do as receiver? You have Amari, you have DPJ, but, your third and fourth receivers, because I don't think Anthony Schwartz is going to make this team this year. So I think it's time to, cut him, and I definitely don't advertise for people to lose their jobs, but unfortunately Anthony Schwartz just hasn't worked in this system and hasn't developed, and maybe he can go to another team and be a better receiver there, but he struggles to catch the ball, and that's one of the things that as wide receiver maybe he should have played running back.
Right.
But, you have to be able to catch the ball. So that's something that, isn't taking place. So I think that, they're going to have another spot open for a wide receiver while they try to develop DPJ and try to turn him into number 2. So, you don't really have any issues at tight end or anything like that, because you have David Njoku, you got Harrison. I forgot what his last name was. Thank you, Brian. But you have him, as your second tight end. And, Kevin Stefanski likes to go to the tight ends a lot. But I don't think he really went to David Njoku as much this season.
I agree.
It doesn't seem like he went to tons, so I don't feel like he felt a lot of value in that position per se. So that's a little weird, but, it is what it is. So now, he'll have Deshaun Watson back for a whole season. I don't think that Deshaun Watson can be suspended for anything else at this point. So, now that they can move on and figure out what they want to do for offense. So, yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and take another break right quick, and then we're going to go ahead and get into these AFC title games that took place this weekend, and then we're going to be right back. You're listening to Her in the Huddle on WOVU 95.9 FM. We'll be right back.
I'm on the right road now.
Move on over, because we're going to continue down the road with the young men of song, the Spiritual Believers, and their exclusive musical guests for their 54th anniversary celebration on February 19th at Zion Hill. The doors to the church will be open at 5 p.m. with programs commencing at 6 p.m.
Come on in here, choir.
Witness them shake down the house of the Lord with some of Cleveland's finest gospel entertainers, such as the Christian Brothers, Elite Jewels, Golden Echoes, Freshman Singers, the Gospel Travelers, Gospel Pearls, Mary Glover and Company, the Medora Singers, and the Reverend Watts and the Sons of Harmony, along with special guests Anthony Hill and New Creation.
Y'all better go ahead.
And you won't believe your MCs. for this year's 54th anniversary of the Young Men of Song, the Spiritual Believers. WOVU's very own General Manager, Jay the Gospel Kid Williams, along with Lady Lynn.
I can't hear nobody. It's dying at their present Lord's Day.
That's February 19th at Zion Hill, 11115 Kinsman Ave. For more information, please contact Lacey Lynch at 440-429-0373 or Chris Mathis at 440-723-1206. Come, clear out your heart and mind with some of Cleveland's dazzling gospel entertainers.
Ain't no party like a Holy Ghost party because the Holy Ghost party don't stop.
This message is brought to you by WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United, a Burton Bell Carr community radio station.
Take winter out for a spin on fresh ice. Now through February 26th, the place to be is the rink at Wade over University Circle, proudly sponsored by PNC. Every Saturday, partake in free ice skating lessons. That's right, free. And special programs with your family and friends. While you're there, use your rink wristband to enjoy discounts around University Circle. And listen up, I know you're going to be skating. I know it's going to be a little chilly. Warm up with a cup of hot chocolate from the concession stand. So whatever you do, you're floating, you glide, you slide, you spin it. This winter season at the rink at Wade Oval in University Circle. For more information, visit universitycircle.org/rink. That's universitycircle.org/rink. This message is brought to you by PNC, University Circle Incorporated, and WOVU 95.9 FM, Our Voices United, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio. Yo, Siri, who has the hottest app in the city?
WOVU 95.9 FM.
Siri, tell them why WOVU 95.9 FM got the hottest app right now.
WOVU streams at 192 kilobits per second, giving the best sound in the city.
WOVU has a new sound coming out our app right now. The only one in the city, 192 kilobytes per second. Listen, man, it is going down. That's what you're telling me, Siri?
That's right, DJ Chris Styles. You already know what it is.
Listen, check out our new sound right now. Go to your mobile store app, download WOVU 95.9 FM and check us out right now. Tell everybody, listen, we're coming at you. This is the Burton Bell Carr Community Radio Station. You already know what it is.
Man, I wanted to finish listening to my song.
Well, what were you listening to?
I was listening to WOVU 95.9 FM.
Oh, they stream live on WOVU.org.
What? All right, I'm on it right now.
Welcome back to Her in the Huddle with Rachel Hill, the First Lady of Sports.
All right, welcome back to Her in the Huddle on WOVU 95.9 FM. This is your girl, Rachel Hill, the First Lady of Sports, and I'm here with Miss Brandy Fairfax today. And we were just discussing some Cleveland Browns and some expectations for next season. What do we realistically expect out of this team after getting to the, conference champions? And in 2 weeks, the Super Bowl winner will be crowned. Where do the Browns stack up and where do they compare? And where do we see this organization being able to go in the future? So we had to extend a little break right there. I had to play some PSAs and Brandy. So now in 2 weeks, we have the Kelsey Bowl coming up. We have the Cleveland Heights Bowl coming up. How crazy is it that two brothers will face each other in the Super Bowl for the first time after 57 years?
Yeah, it's so crazy to hear, especially, we know other brothers who are around the league and, you kind of think about it like, wait, those teams haven't made it to the Super Bowl at the same time. But, for them also to be from Cleveland Heights, it is special to see them both playing against each other in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. And we kind of, they kind of highlight, even though it's Cleveland Heights and I'm from Shaker Heights, they highlight Cleveland and they rep Cleveland wherever they go, even though, it's Cleveland Heights, Ohio, they still rep it and stuff like that. So that, that helps, put put that town on the map a little bit. So, I appreciate it. And also, excuse me, I have the hiccups. We have two black quarterbacks starting in the Super Bowl, which is the first thing, excuse me, to happen in 57 years. So, can you talk about how historic and significant this is?
Yeah, it's definitely so historic. Is definitely, something that'll definitely be remembered. It's also going to be, during February, which is Black History Month. So I think, that makes it even more special on top of that.
Yeah, that's I forgot about it being Black History Month as well. So yeah, that's an awesome thing. Something that never happened before. It's sad that it took 57 years. And you think
Mhm.
about 50 years, that's a long time. Not a long time. It's fairly young, but it is a long time. When you round it up to the nearest, 10, nearest five, that's 60 years in which two quarterbacks are black to play in the Super Bowl. And, there are lots of times there's a lot of talk about, black quarterbacks and they're not intelligent enough to play quarterback in this league. And it's kind of, sticking it to them. Patrick Mahomes is mixed, but he's still seen as a black man in this country. So to see him take on Jalen Hurts is, just something that's so amazing, and it's very historical. And I'm excited for it to see how it turns out. George said, simple here. Philly versus San Francisco was a dud. As for Cincy versus KC, the slant penalty calls was significant. I've said it so many times. A good ref or umpire are the ones that are seen and not heard as they call a fair game for both sides. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to get into the Philadelphia Eagles versus the 49ers. And pretty much the Eagles, blew out the 49ers. And what happened was Brock Purdy got hurt on one of the first plays of the game. And obviously, it would have been a better game if Brock Purdy had played. What did you think when he first went down?
Yeah, when it first happened, I didn't think, the injury was going to be that serious. I thought he was going to be able to, come back and play in the game. But, as soon as I saw it, being all wrapped up, I was like, it's not good.
Yeah, I was wondering if he was going to be able to come in again because I always think about that scene in Varsity Blues where he shoots him up, with that stuff. And to see if he's going to play again, and I guess it's Paul Walker is Paul Walker the quarterback in Varsity Blues, and James Vanderbeek is like, you're not going to shoot him up, But I'm thinking that these players would very gladly, recommend to getting shot up. So San Francisco was on their fourth string quarterback this year, Josh Johnson, who had been in the league for 10 years. I never heard of the dude. So I was really surprised to, see him come in there. But they're on their fourth string. And at a certain point, they almost brought in Christian McCaffrey as quarterback. So that's just how bad, it was. But the San Francisco 49ers defense was playing some D, and Philly kind of got off to a slow start. It took them a minute to get things going, but, Josh Johnson just couldn't keep up. And unfortunately, he couldn't play the type of game that Brock Purdy played, and they kept on getting hit with not delay of game penalties, but what's that? Not being able to get the one out, the snap count. Is that delay a game?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, they kept getting hit with delay of game penalties, almost like 4 of them, since Josh Johnson had came in. So, that already put you in a non-manageable down situation when you're already training from behind and you don't have Brock Purdy, a person that can move the ball, beyond the sticks. So, they were just in a very bad position to begin with. So I don't like the 49ers. I was not rooting for them. 49ers fatigue since the 1980s. But I wanted to see a good game, and I thought it was going to be a good game with Brock Purdy as quarterback. But once Josh Johnson came in and they were like, he's been in the league for 10 years and he's been a backup, I knew that it was going to drastically change for the 49ers. And I think the 49ers did too. I think that they tried to prop up Josh as much as they could and encourage him, but Josh just wasn't going to get the job done.
Yeah, I agree. It was definitely hard, especially, when Brock Purdy, he had won 7 games straight. So, I thought it was going to be a much closer game. It's unfortunate that he did get hurt. They did say he did hurt his UCL, so he'll be out 6 months with that injury.
Oh
And
my
they
God.
Yeah, and they said he's also going to, wait and see another doctor to see if he's going to need surgery or not on it. But they said as of right now, he'll be out 6 months. So I guess the injury, was serious. I know yesterday during the game, they were saying, sometimes with those injuries, if it's with your nerves, they can't grip the ball well and don't have much feeling in their fingers.
Oh wow, yeah, because and then it happened so early, one of the first offensive plays of the game. So I'm like, man, because I'm not really watching, West Coast teams all like that because they play so late, and I don't really watch NFC. I mainly watch AFC games because that's what comes on here. But I was excited to see what this San Francisco 49ers team, was so good that everybody bragged about. I wanted to see what was going on, and their defense kept them in this game, but it just became too much. And their defense got tired because the offense couldn't move the ball. So the defense was constantly out there. Even when Philly, didn't do anything with the ball, they're still, tired. So, they were just kind of gashed a little bit, on defense. And, it kind of reminded me of the Cleveland Browns. How the Cleveland Browns don't do anything offensively. So that defense is always, in the game, and they get gashed and they get tired. And when you get tired, the first thing you keep doing is making mistakes. And then San Fran had all those penalties against them. And did you see when that one player, I can't remember what his name was, but when he slammed down the Philadelphia player, he body slammed him. Did you see that?
Williams. Yes, I did.
Yeah. And that was just out of frustration. You could the announcer said that you could see this team unraveling, and you really could once they saw that their season was slipping away. So many penalties that they had. Same penalty with pushing Jalen Hurts out of the sidelines as well. That was another penalty that was able to help the Eagles or whatever. So you watch the team slowly unravel, due to all the penalties and all that other stuff, that they had. And it was a big difference. So I like I said, I'm not a San Francisco fan, but honestly felt kind of sorry for San Francisco because honestly they didn't know how to account for Josh Purdy going out. And I don't think that there was anything that Kyle Shanahan could do at a certain point.
Yeah, I agree. Like the first play of the game, Fred Warner was shaken up. He's one of the best linebackers in the league right now. And then, Purdy getting hurt. And then we saw Bosa, on the sideline, took that cleat to the leg. And then he was kind of hobbling the rest of that game. But, I think Kyle Shanahan tried to do what he could with what he had. We saw when Purdy went into that game, they were kind of, trying to do trick plays. And I think, that's really all he could do.
Yeah, did you see at the end of the game when they were outside and Nick Bosa was arguing with a fan, telling him I'm rich and stuff like that? Well, we already know you rich. You don't really have to tell us. We know you're a millionaire and we're amongst the poor compared to you. Do you really have to tell us that?
Right. I know. I
Yeah.
saw that. That was a crazy video.
Yeah, then he's peddling, crazy stuff, talking about Philadelphia stole the election because he's a Trump supporter and all that other stuff. I'm embarrassed that he went to Ohio State. I truly am. But yeah, it was just a crazy game. And then we're gonna move on to hold on. Have we finished talking everything about Philly? Yeah. Oh, turnovers as well, hurt San Francisco. So that wasn't a good thing. But, Philadelphia had the running game going with Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, and Boston Scott. And now we can move on to Chiefs versus Bengals. So there was let me take us to a commercial break right quick, and then we're going to finish up the show with the Chiefs versus the Bengals, a little bit about Cleveland Cavaliers, and we're going to touch on John Adams, the drummer for the Cleveland Indians. He passed away today. So some sad news we're going to talk about a little bit later. So we're going to go ahead and take this extended break, and you're listening to Her in the Huddle on WOVU 95.9 FM. We'll be right back.
Housing, employment,
benefits, domestic safety, or another fundamental need, please visit Legal Aid's website at www.lascleb.org anytime to apply for assistance. You can also call during Legal Aid's intake hours, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 9 to 4 p.m., or Tuesday and Thursday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Call 216-687-1900.
It's time for the 10th annual Celebrity Soup for the Soul fundraiser. Grab your spoons, your bread, and your appetite and meet us on Saturday, February 25th from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the Hilton Garden Inn, 700 Beta Drive in Mayfield Village. This fabulous fundraiser will be hosted by
Now I'm trying to kick it with Kenny Crumpet.
and
Anita Harris.
Soup for the Soul 2023 will fill you up with deliciously prepared soups served up piping hot
So good and tasty.
by some of Cleveland's finest. Dishing out the delectables will be the folks from J. Honda Huddle Group, Skylar Ray's Culinary Service, along with Chef Eric Wells. Yvonne Horter of Hope Haven, Kevin Chill, Heard, WOVU's General Manager, Jay the Gospel Kid, Sam Silk, Mark Lyons, and Nathan Landry. The fun doesn't stop there. After filling your belly, get your groove on with a live concert featuring jazz artist Kofi B, straight out of Akron. A silent auction, door prizes, raffle, music, food, friends, and fun, all in support of the families and children of Strengthening Our Students, nonprofit organization whose mission is to enrich lives through education, life skills, and innovative programs. Meet us Saturday, February 25th at the Hilton Garden Inn, 700 Beta Drive from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. For more information, visit strengtheningourstudents.com or call 216-374-6452. Soup for the Soul is sponsored by Morgan Lennon's, RPM, Popeyes Louisiana Kitchen, the AKA Team, Bertha Car Development, J. Honda Auto Group, Hilton Garden Inn, Nexter Media Group, Fred and Associates of Cleveland, Jack Entertainment, Code M Magazine, and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our voices united, Burton Bell Park Community Radio.
Hey, thanks again for the ride.
Oh, no worries. I was already going this way anyway.
What's this? Is that WOVU playing? Oh man, you know they've been on the air for like.
Yeah, I know. 5 whole years? It's really been 5 whole years. Wow. That went by so fast.
Yeah, it really did. But they definitely be putting in that work to spread the truth of self and community resources available.
Yeah, plus the music always going. Their DJ list is crazy.
Right though? I even downloaded the app so I can listen wherever, whenever.
Man, you have a great day. I'm about to go download this WOVU app.
Yeah, don't forget. And thanks for the ride again. I'll catch up with you later.
Welcome back to Huddle.
Hey, welcome back. You're listening to Her and Huddle on WOVU and 95.9 FM. This is your girl, Rachel Hill, the First Lady of Sports. I am here with Brandy Fairfax, and we're going to quickly get into the AFC title game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals. And I will admit, I was rooting for the Cincinnati Bengals to win yesterday because I have I have Kansas City Chiefs fatigue. They've been to 5 straight AFC championships. I am just kind of over it. I'm sorry. I was rooting for the Bengals. Brandy, who are you rooting for?
I was rooting for the Bengals as well.
Okay, yeah. Was it disappointing when they won, or were you just like, eh?
I was a little bit disappointed just because I felt like the Bengals had that game.
Okay, yeah, I was really disappointed. I just thought that, with no time, left on the clock, hardly, that Joe Burrow was going to solidify his legend at Arrowhead Stadium and beat the Chiefs for four times straight. So I'm really sad that didn't happen. But there was a lot of trash talking before this game took place. Because did you hear what the mayor of Cincinnati said?
I did.
Yeah, that was I can't believe that somebody signed off on that and approved that. And that was just a shame because if anything, I'm coming out with a chip on the shoulder. Normally mayors, they make a small wager like a case of beer, something like that. But you talking about, paternity testing to see if somebody's daddy and all that other stuff. You talking about Maury Povich type stuff, that's just too much. So, he said too much and it wasn't really funny at all because people take this stuff seriously and you don't want to get the Chiefs any motivation because they've heard all week that the line kept going flip-flopping between which team was going to win, but they've heard all week how Joe Burrow owns them. He's beat them at Arrowhead Stadium, and they've heard this narrative that Joe Burrow is 3-0 against them. So I would want to come out too, just like Joe Burrow heard the narrative that he couldn't beat the Cleveland Browns. He was like 0 for 4 since coming into this league of beating this team. And, he finally got over that hump in Cincinnati. So, there was a lot of mess talking. But what were your thoughts about the game between Kansas City and Cincinnati?
I think, to start, I think, Cincinnati did start off slower than I expected. But overall, I think compared to what we saw last week, I think, Joe Burrow didn't play his best game. And I think, they tried blaming the loss, on the penalty to end the game. But I think, there were a few things throughout the game as the Bengals, did wrong that could have made them win that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they definitely would have went into OT, if it wasn't for the penalty. I don't think, that Kansas City would have been able to get the ball back in enough time and move it back. They were out of position to kick a field goal. So they were going to have to punt the ball away again back to Cincinnati's offense. But, unfortunately that penalty happened. I felt so bad for Joseph Asai, watching him, cry, shoulder shaking, that real cry, like when you just broke up with somebody, and stuff like that. He was doing one of those, and you could just see that, he was leaving it out on the field, so I felt sorry for him watching him do that. It was just a bad sight to see. And, I'm pretty glad that, his players were lifting him up and stuff like that. But, it was a back and forth affair. And you could see Cincy, gaining momentum and seemingly getting stronger, each series. But, you had to give props to the Cincinnati Chiefs defense for tempering that and, stymieing the run that they were trying to make. And, they continued to rush, Joe Burrow every play, almost sending 3-4. They continued to keep the pressure on him and they got sacked 4 times. So the offensive line kind of let Cincy down a little bit too. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I agree. He was sacked 5 times, which, is the most for him. Usually, they're good at protecting him. But yeah, that was definitely one thing that I was surprised. And I think, their running game, Joe Mixon wasn't doing as well. They've been, switching back and forth between him and Perrine. And I think, he also performed pretty well this whole season.
Yeah. So, but since he had 2 times to take the lead in the 4th quarter, but the Chiefs defense prevented them from doing that. So, and then also on that final drive, special teams didn't do their job and, allowed a huge punt return to be returned back to put them in even better field goal position. So, there was a series of events and different plays that cost them the game, not what happened with Joseph Asai. Patrick Mahomes sold that, and all the acting ain't in Hollywood, as I like to say. And, he looked like, a player during the World Cup and made it seem worse than it really was. But, obviously that penalty enabled them to get even better field goal position because Harrison Butker had been very inconsistent this season. So I didn't know if it was one that he was going to make because if they hadn't got that penalty, I believe that they would have punted the ball away. I don't know if they wanted to try that type of field goal for him. I think that they were content and everybody thought that that game would go into overtime, but it did not. So, it kind of ended right there. So, just really sorry for Cincinnati. They were like on a 10-game winning streak as well, too. So that was ended. But, I feel like, they'll be right back there next year.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't count them out. I think, this also just motivates them even more, especially, to lose a game like that, like you said, they all thought was going into overtime. And, I think they would have definitely punted that ball away because I believe they said Butker missed a 54 in warm up. So I think, without that penalty, would have been about that. So I think they definitely would have punted the ball away and just went to overtime.
Yeah. So it'll be the Chiefs versus the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. Who you got on an early call right now? Who you got?
I think it's going to be such a close game. I think it's going to be so good, but I'm rolling with Philly for this one.
Really? Yeah, I'm rolling with Philly too. And I didn't know Jalen Hurts was a fraternity brother of mine. So I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and he's a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So I got to root for my bro. So I'll be rooting for the Philadelphia Eagles. And like I said, I'm not a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I rooted for them in their first Super Bowl and all that other stuff, because they hadn't been there and, all of forever. And I felt sorry for them. I always root for the underdog. But like I said, I'm sick and tired. They knocked my Browns out a couple years ago. They continue to beat up on the Browns. So I'm kind of over Kansas City and I'll be rooting for them. So moving on to the Cavs really quickly while we got a few minutes left. So last night, they were able to avenge the Clippers at home with a win, even though the Clippers sat out their stars, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Marcus Morris, Reggie Jackson, John Wall, and Robert Covington. So they sat them all out. And, they avenged that loss that took place earlier on the road in which they were beating the Clippers, but let the Clippers continue to come back because they struggled to defend the 3-point line. So they pretty much, understood the assignment this time going in. I wondered if JB had to have a talk with them or if they just knew, without having that talk with him that, you got to go ahead and get this win and put their foot on the throats because you didn't have any of their starters. And one thing we found out, I don't think Kawhi Leonard has played a back-to-back since 2017.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. I know
Yeah.
he usually doesn't play them, but to know that, that's crazy.
Yeah, even with the Spurs and Toronto and the Clippers, he hasn't played a back-to-back. So I'm kind of over the load management. I think is, out of control. I feel bad for the fans. When these players come into town, they don't get a chance to see them play. One of the examples was Zion. When he came in with the Pelicans, people came to see Zion play. Or, with the Golden State Warriors, people came to see Steph play. So, I mean, that takes away from what the fans are trying to do. But, Seti, Jetty Osman, I always call him Seti. Jetty Osman, had a great game. He tied his career high of 29 points on Turkish Heritage Night. He was 7 of 7 for 3-point land, and he's 5th in the Eastern Conference Eastern Conference for games scoring double figures off the bench this season. And he's also the 3rd player in Cavaliers history to finish a game without missing on at least 7 shots from 3-point range. What are your thoughts about what Jetty is to this team?
Yeah, I think the past couple of years, Jetty had, kind of a bigger role with the team. Since we've had the new additions this year, he hasn't seen much playing time. And, last year we kind of saw some inconsistencies from him. But, I think to not have played much and to come in yesterday and be able to play like that and shoot 7 for 7 from the 3, he did look good yesterday.
Yeah. So, Jetty has been with this organization for a little bit of time, and he's been steady and reliable coming off that bench, shoring up that bench unit. And then, one of the things is, they're playing better defense. So they're still struggling to defend the 3-point line. But they defended the Clippers well on the 3-point line because I think the Clippers only had like 2 3-pointers yesterday. So one thing is that they are 21-5 at home. So that is huge. That's the best home record in all of the NBA. But the thing is, you can't lose when you get on the road. So that's something to be thought about. And once again, we want to send out the condolences to the family of John Adams, who was a drummer for the Cleveland Indians at the time. And he has passed away. So it really hasn't been the same down at the ballpark, without him. And do you have a memory of John Adams you want to share really quickly?
Yeah, I remember being little and, always hearing it, but, it's crazy to see, how long and how many decades he did it for, but it is truly sad.
Yeah, so condolences to his family, and for Rachel Hill and Brandy Fairfax. You've been listening to Her in the Huddle on WOVU 95.9 FM, and we are out of here. Thank you, Brandy. We had some long breaks today because I had to play a whole bunch of PSAs. So